In a large company somewhere in the world, the current lineup of products and services starts to stagnate. A senior executive, maybe the CEO, maybe somebody in marketing, gets the innovation bug and they declare that innovation is the source of growth for the future. Eventually, declarations are made, emails are sent, announcements are shared, and a task force or committee is formed. Some companies even hire a chief innovation officer, a CIO, to demonstrate how serious they are. The broader organization is crowdsourced, encouraged to send in their very best ideas to help drive the future of the organization. And a newly created mailbox or cool new internet site is set up to gather those ideas. There's a buzz of excitement in the halls. Finally, people are being asked for their ideas. Brainstorm sessions are held by cool consultancies with hip glasses and dark clothes. Ideas are shared, and eventually an idea is selected, maybe by the person with the loudest voice or the most political sway, and they lobby for their favorite, and eventually it's fast-tracked into execution. Once it's executed, it dismally fails because either it wasn't a good idea to begin with, it wasn't customer-focused, or it was fast-tracked and pared back along the way. The team reassembles cautiously and with a bit more care selects another idea, but this time they vow to test it. Research is gathered and evaluated, and then more research, more time passes. The idea is refined and refined again, pared way back, and then soft launch only to fail again because it has lost its uniqueness, or maybe it's too late to market. Meanwhile, across the organization, thousands who were enthused by innovation are chagrined to see their suggestions disappear into a black hole, and the bad ideas brought to market by the bigwigs totally fail. They start complaining. Eventually, enough complaints build up and the CEO has had enough bad news and he disbands the committee, he shuts down the crowdsourcing site, scraps all the other ideas, all in the name of current results. And then he announces to the executive team that it's time to refocus on what's most important, quarterly profits. Innovation has now become a bad word.
All right, so sound familiar? There's this new language called innovation theater, right? Everyone, it's easy to say we're going to do innovation, put it on the strat plan, hire a team, get beanbag chairs and foosball tables, and all of a sudden you're in innovation, and then you realize you actually have to do stuff. And that's really what this school is about. So we're going to focus for this afternoon on if you're in a complex health organization, how do you organize for innovation? How do you actually operationalize this? A big part of the school is you learning how to think differently and act differently, but you need to do that in your context. For most of you, some of you are not in a big organization, but you need to work with one, so it's just as important. So one of my favorite papers about this was a Harvard Business Review paper. I think it was 2004. Not working. I think it was 2004. Maybe somebody can throw it up on Slack if you can find it. Challenging or questioning, is it possible to be ambidextrous? You know what that means? When you can use your left hand and your right hand. In North America, we say, can you walk and chew gum at the same time? Because as innovation started to become really the imperative for organizations everywhere, it was really hard to see if the current structure of an organization allow you to run the organization really well while also kind of preparing for the future. And in my session yesterday, I told you guys about this idea of pretty much blowing up what you're doing now to prepare for the future is called creative destruction. That's what innovation is. That word was coined back in the 1800s by the economist Schumpeter. And Eric Topol really started to document this phenomenon in healthcare as it is getting creatively destroyed and put back together in new ways. And so the tension of the ambidextrous organization is, the two words we use is, organizing to exploit the current business model, maximize it, get it well-oiled, take out risk, all that stuff. I pretty much in healthcare think that's just improvement, which is really important because we have a lot of room for improvement. And we've now got infrastructure and machinery, the Institute for Health Improvement. We have a chief improvement officer, et cetera, et cetera. But that is so different from explore activities, which is what's the next frontier when my organization no longer makes sense in the 21st century. And that's innovation. And if you remember, when I opened this school back with you in June 22nd, really important to distinguish the difference between improvement and innovation, right? If this is the current state, a true innovation lifts you to the worst, best place. iPhone 1, even iPhone 2, maybe iPhone. And then improvement just iterates on that and makes it better. Another way to think about it, high jump. You guys heard of the Fosbury flop, right? So the y-axis is meters, and this is after the pole already came into high jump. But, you know, when scissors came up, then the Western roll and the straddle, improvement was all the little stuff, better shoes, better turf, a better stick, maybe some performance-enhancing drugs, I don't know, to get the meters higher and higher. But the Fosbury flop, a completely different way to think about jumping over a really high stick, that was that big lift of innovation. So that's the work we're trying to do, not improvement. And so the question is, how do you organize for that? Well, the challenge is, and you guys have probably seen this slide, the industrial structure of organizations is actually designed to stifle innovation, right? You know, all the antibodies against innovation are built into the traditional structure. You know, lots of vacancies here. So I gave this talk at a keynote in Canada, and then if you want to do this too, people started crowdsourcing boxes I was missing, and it was like therapy for people. They just got all their troubles out. So I will update this org chart if you want me to. But that's because, you know, these are the kinds of things we see over and over again, not just health organizations, any organization struggle with when they try to get out on an innovation journey. Right? So things like what we call portfolio blindness. You declare you're an innovation, now all of a sudden everybody's doing innovation and you have all this activity, but it's not organized or structured. Scaling up, death by pilot. The favorite line I heard since I moved to the Netherlands, we have more pilots than KLM. I love that line. You know, people sticking to their favorites. Skunk works, so that's when you know it's too hard to do innovation in the organization because the antibodies will eat it. So you set up a separate group on the side. That's called a skunk works. But then how do you reintegrate that into the front lines to actually get the value? Being too stuck in ideation and brainstorming, being myopic, looking inside instead of being in the world and out there. And then, you know, the easiest to do is to retreat to the short term. And many, many more. You guys are all struggling with these. So what's the answer? Well, one answer that was suggested, I think this was by Osterwalder. So I talked about him yesterday. He's one of the top thinkers and authors in the entrepreneurial space. He actually thinks the time has come that every organization needs two CEOs. The chief executive officer, right? Their job is to execute on the current business plan. And the chief entrepreneurial officer. Their job is to destroy the current business and get it ready for the future. The problem is when we do innovation, we put that person below. So ultimately, the executive officer is still calling the shots. And he's suggesting the two report to the board this way. And they're two parts of the business. Nobody has done this yet since he wrote this pretty seminal paper. But he even went so far, and you guys can throw this on Slack, and wrote the job description. And you can't read it. But it's like... this is not the job description of a CEO, like the first CEO. You believe anything is possible. You've built $1 billion business from nothing. You're tremendously diplomatic. You're comfortable with uncertainty. We reward CEOs because they've stayed the course and stayed in the current business. So if that's not going to happen tomorrow, that you're all going to go back to your work and say, we have a great idea. Let's have a second CEO. The answer is you actually organize for innovation. So maybe, Chantel, if you could get those sheets out. So there are a lot of frameworks that will help you think about how do I plan for organization in my innovation in my organization. I really like this one. So you guys all know Clay Christensen. We talked about him quite a bit. He's one of the innovation gurus. He wrote The Innovator's Prescription. When he wrote that book, which is really a manifesto for healthcare in terms of what's coming in disruption, all these corporations and hospitals and health systems started calling Clay and saying, I need help now, get my organization ready. So he spun out a separate consultancy called Innosight, and they just do innovation support for healthcare and for education. So this is their framework. So they basically say, you got to just get your blueprint. What are you going to do? Why are you doing innovation? What's the scope? What's the goal? What's the time horizons? So kind of like the setting the foundations. Then you got to build your innovation engine. So if this is your blueprint for the car, this is the engine. What's your model? How are you going to go from idea to impact? There's a process for that, and your metrics and all that. Once you have all that, then you got to fuel up your engine. people, resources, and most importantly, culture. So when you blow out his framework, and that's what you guys all have in front of you there, you know, there's some more elements, right? So when you set your blueprint, you have real goals and most importantly, boundaries. Boundaries means when we say we're doing innovation, what are we doing and what are we not doing? So I had 15 executives from a major health organization that decided they're going to do innovation in a room. And I said, what do you guys think is in scope and out scope? One executive said, all we should be doing is cost savings. Another one was like, we should blow up our business and build a new one. Another one wanted to focus only on one little geography. Another one said our innovation should be going all over the world. Nobody was aligned, even though they decided they were going to do innovation, right? So really important to have clear scope around what you're doing when you're saying you're innovation and what you're not, a portfolio and resources for it. On the engine, there's your innovation model, your process. I call it your sausage factory. Put the meat in, do something, and you get a sausage or a fricandel, I guess, at the end. And then all your tools and metrics. And then, you know, all the fuel, your leadership, all your partnerships in the ecosystem, your culture, and HR policies that actually give you permission to do innovation. So we're going to do a little exercise now. Show of hands, how many of you are with an organization that has an innovation something, an office, a unit? Okay, most of you. Okay, good. So now we're going to do a little bit of a self-review and a self-audit. So go through this, read some of the elements. I want you to use your pen and pick 3 of all the elements on this page, and I think there's maybe 10. And which of the 3, if you could do nothing else, but really make sure these are in place and done well, which 3 do you need to have, okay? And then, once you've, so make a box around it or whatever you want to do. Does everybody have a sheet? Oh, one here. Okay, once you've picked your 3, then I want you to score yourself, your organization today, on a 0 to 5. If you're not in an organization, pick one that you need to work with a lot. Pick Reshape. Sorry, Lucian. So 0 means you haven't even started, right? There's nothing there, but you know it's really, really important. And then 5 is like, they're going to write the Harvard Business Review article about you, okay? So just do a quick self-audit, and then let's see what you come up with. When you're done, just come up, and I want you to just take 3 numbers, right? So you have 3 boxes, each has a number from 0 to 5, and just put it in the box that it's at. If you want, you could tell somebody to do it for you. So for example, who's done? I could do an example. Andre? So you've got, you put a 3 here, a 2 here, and a 0 here. Got it? Okay. Come on, let's get him. So he said this is the most important. He's at a 3. That's most important. He's at a 2. And this is the most important, and they haven't started. Thank you. You got this. Including my innovation leaders, Joop. Come on down, my friend. And Reshape. We're just going to crowdsource a barometer of the innovation readiness of the Netherlands. Okay, so what Clay Christensen and his team at Innosight will do is, because they've done this so many times with so many complex health organizations, they can then show you where you stand relative to others, so you don't feel so bad about your starting point. So it's a good exercise. Let's just take a quick look at the patterns. Okay, so who's here from HR? Nobody said HR policies are a priority, so that means HR is not the barrier. That's good. So lots on culture and leadership. That always is the first, right? Just setting your strategy. That's not actually that hard to do. Make a declaration of what you're going to do and what you're not. Look how much that's important to you guys. Okay? So anyway, we'll summarize this for you and share that after. We don't have time because we started late, and we've got people who actually do innovation every day and not people like me who just talk about it. But what I was going to do is show you some examples, because we've been working with health organizations from all over the world that are on this journey, and 40 of them are coming to the Netherlands October 17th to 19th. I just checked the registrations. 6 people from Sweden are coming, 2 from Denmark, Belgium's sending people, the NHS, Kaiser, the VA, a whole bunch of people are coming, and we're going to work through this. So what I did in here, and you can get this on the Google Drive, is I just gave you some really interesting short vignettes of really interesting ways they're organizing for innovation. That could be inspiration for you. So take a look at them on your own time. If you want me to share more, connect you to these people, because sometimes it can help in healthcare, especially when the organization you're inspired by is way across the pond, to show what others are doing, because then you're not alone trying to propose something impossible. It's actually pretty normal. So that's what I was going to have, but I'm not going to do those, so I'm just going to do a nice helicopter ride through them all right now.